What's going on, everyone? Sid Gordon here with the Sid Gordon Podcast, powered by Core Medical Group. Today we have Ryan on, and he is quite the specimen. Ryan Blakeley, and he has an amazing background, amazing accomplishments, both in the military and into his civilian world. And I'm super excited to have you on, Ryan. Thank you so much.
Of course, and I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here.
So we always start this thing off by kind of just talking about your background, how you grew up, how you ended up in the military, because everybody's story seems to be different. I've never had, except I get quite a bit of they flew into the Twin Towers and I stopped what I was doing and went to a recruiting office. But why don't you take over and give us a background of your childhood, where you grew up, how you grew up, and we'll go from there, brother.
Okay, so I grew up in Towson, Maryland, which is about 30 minutes outside of Baltimore. And I grew up under a Marine and a nurse. So the discipline in the household from an early age was very intense. So I've always had a very big drive into sports and just a win attitude to always make sure, you're coming in first and doing the right thing. And, just very aggressive, played lacrosse my whole life, big into sports. And then ended up going to a all-male Catholic high school where, still was very disciplined there, and then actually went to the Citadel, which is the military college of South Carolina, which is where I graduated back in 2003. So when I was at the Citadel, I played lacrosse. I did Marine Corps ROTC, and I actually went through a program called the Police Corps program, which is no longer in existence. It was a program that they used to encourage a lot more college-educated police officers on the street. So, which one thing that I will actually correct is I was never in the military. So I went to the military college.
That's right.
But when I got out of the Citadel, when I graduated, I actually went on to work for the Charleston County Sheriff's Office. So I stayed in Charleston. I worked there for close to 9 years. With the Sheriff's Office, I did a lot of criminal interdiction up on the interstate, as well as the SWAT team, which was my main bread and butter. I was on there for the majority of the time that I was with the Sheriff's Office. While I was at the Sheriff's Office, since I was on a Type 1 SWAT team, I was actually eligible to go overseas, and I went with DynCorp through their WHIPS program. So I went on with them, spent some time over in Iraq with the WHIPS program.
Talk to us about that program, kind of how that works, because there's a lot.
So the WHIPS program is a little bit different than the original program. There's I can't remember the name of it, but DynCorp originally had a program where you go over to Iraq and Afghanistan as a police officer, and you would teach the Iraqi police on kind of how to operate. I wasn't really interested in that. I was approached to do that originally. And I was an FTO at the Sheriff's Office. And to me, I enjoyed, teaching a lot of younger police officers coming on the force how to be good cops, not to be lazy cops. I was very proactive when I was a cop. I didn't really have an interest in going overseas and teaching that to the Iraqis. But what I was interested in when they approached me about the WHIPS program, it was more of a protective services program. So I went over there, and basically what we would do is our team, whether you worked in 2-man elements or anywhere up to an entire team of 12 or 15, you were pulling private security for a lot of VIPs, ambassadors. I actually was able to work on McCain's detail when he came over there for a while, and our job at that point was basically to take a VIP from our consulate or the embassy, depending where we were based out of at the time, and we would take them to their meetings or drive them through different cities and just pretty much provide security for them during their time in Iraq. So I did that for a little over a year, and then I actually from there continued to stay in contracting, but went into the personnel tracking and locating the contract world, and spent about 2.5, almost 3 years in that world as a supervisor before I actually started working for myself.
So what was and guys, by the way, if you guys don't follow him, you need to follow him because he's an absolute specimen. I see him running and rucking and training, and I'm like, dude, this guy's. So Ryan, I ran my first half marathon at the about a month and a half ago.
Oh, nice.
Never ran more than 4 miles in my life. I played lacrosse too when I was coming up.
Oh, good
And
deal.
you know, my one of my best friends who also is a staff member, Mike Arrow, tells me, he's like, Sid, 3% of men over the age of 40 ever sprint again. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's interesting. And he goes, 5% of men over the age of 40 ever run a half a marathon. And I was like, well, that's cool. He's like, I signed us up for a half a marathon. It was legit like a month and a half before the marathon we signed up for it. I haven't run, more than like 2 miles in, 10 years. So I call my buddy who's this ultra marathon runner. He's also my elk guide.
Oh, nice.
And he puts this program together for us. And 2.5 weeks before the marathon, I completed 7 miles, and like it took me an hour and 3 minutes to run 7 miles. He goes, "You're ready. Don't worry. You're good to go." And I'm like, dude, that's half the amount of a distance. He's like, yeah, you're fine. You'll be able to, if you can run 7, you can run 13. And I was like, dude, I don't know if that's right. But sure enough, dude, he was spot on, man. And we did it in 2 hours and 3 minutes. So
That's awesome.
yeah, it was my biggest physical achievement probably in about 9 years since I quit, fighting and doing jits. But it was awesome, man. So hats off to you, because I know 13 miles is just a Saturday morning for you.
Yeah, I'm actually gearing up for something pretty big this fall that I'm really excited for. So I've been training, doing a lot more running lately, getting schooled up for that. So I got a couple 5Ks, 10Ks, halves coming up, and I got a really big event towards the end of this fall that I'm, like I said, training for. So I'm super excited. So that'll be all over social. I'm not going to want to get into that yet because I'm still trying to keep it under wraps. But I do love training. It's something that's very passionate for me. I mean, obviously, it's what I do full time with others. So, I do love to make sure that I walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
Well, I mean, that's evident. So yeah, we don't have to be concerned about that. So going back in that, I really want to get into your daily goals and like kind of how you
Okay.
stay on such an amazing, like I can see your schedule almost from your social media. It's pretty crazy. But
Hmm.
before we do that, can you talk to us a little bit about transitioning? Why you decided to transition out of policing and out of contracting, and how you ended up where you are today, and exactly what you are doing today? Because I really think that that's an
Okay.
important detail for this podcast.
Of course. So, it's funny because with my backgrounds, kind of like we talked about with my background, I have a lot of different pieces to the puzzle here. So I've had a few different transitions, because I had the transition from law enforcement into contracting into the supervisory work with another contracting department, and then going into working for myself. So there's been a lot of transitions along the way, but for me, it's always trying to climb that ladder. I always want to make sure that I'm challenging myself, that I'm pushing myself, that I don't ever stay in one spot long enough to get complacent or even bored, for lack of better terms. So transitioning from law enforcement into the contract world was actually pretty easy because there was a lot of excitement there, because I was doing the law enforcement world for so long. I was doing the SWAT thing, the interdiction thing. I loved being a police officer. Honestly, still to this day, that's probably my number one profession. I mean, it just taught me so much in my entire life. So when switching over to the contract world, obviously, like the money was insane. It was like a 5x, 6x from where I was in law enforcement, which was very attractive. But also to me, a lot of my buddies that went into the military when I got out of the Citadel were deployed, and obviously I didn't. So I thought that could be my time, that I could, go over and experience a little bit about that. Plus, the gentlemen that I knew were working over there and that I knew were already on some of the teams that I would be on. Were some phenomenal guys. So transitioning over to that was a little easy because I knew I was going to something bigger and better, and just a whole bigger piece of the pie. Um, Leaving contracting, going into the personnel tracking and locator world, that was kind of within the same element. So it was not too much of a transition. It was just from being on ground in Iraq and Afghanistan to going into working at the command center in DC for the State Department. So it was a little bit different, but it was a more admin type role. Like I said, it was a supervisor role, so I was in charge of a lot more people. I was deploying a lot of people. I was still deploying a little bit at the time, so that was exciting. But I will say probably the biggest transition, and the one I'll probably talk about the most, is switching over from working for the State Department, for the PTL program, for DynCorp, Sheriff's Office, and then going to work for myself. That was probably the biggest transition because, when you're working for somebody else, I mean, that paycheck's coming every week and someone's telling you what to do, and you're kind of, working for the man, so to speak, where when you go and work for yourself, nobody's telling you what to do. No one's telling you how to make the money. No one's telling you that check's going on Friday. It's basically all up to you. It's kind of funny because that saying everybody's like, nobody's coming for you, and it's kind of like when you work for yourself, it's all you. So that was probably the biggest transition in learning how to build a successful business, how to scale it, how to network, how to put all the pieces to that puzzle together to become successful. But I also thrive on challenge, and that was probably the biggest challenge that that I had faced because I was working for major companies making really, really good money. And then here I am transitioning over into an entirely different field, working for myself. And I think the first month I might have made like $800. And I was like, yeah,
This is not good.
this is not good. But they kept saying everything I was researching 3 to 5 years as an entrepreneur, you got to keep going through the cycle. You just got to keep showing up,
Yep.
keep doing that. Which was, interesting to me because I was like, well, that's what I've always done. I just always show up. I'm a big fan of the phrase, I put on my social media all the time. You don't need straight A's. It's not really about straight A's. It's about perfect attendance. As long as you show up every damn day, it's going to happen. You don't need to come in and be a rock star every day, and that's how you get burned out. But if you come in and you at least show up and you touch home plate and you do the damn thing every day, things are going to work out. You're going to get successful. I mean, anything's optimal as long as you force it hard enough. So that transition to me was probably the biggest, but honestly was probably the most serious transition that I would have undergone through all my careers. Because again, now I'm here working for myself. I've had 3 different companies. I've rebranded. I've done a lot as far as working for myself goes. And I'd say the transition process to me was actually very fun because you're learning new things, you're challenging yourself, and as you challenge and as you conquer these certain challenges, you're growing. But it was a very different challenge because a lot of the challenges I had before were all physical. You want to go to this course, you got to make it through the eval. You want to get on this team, you got to make it through the selection. You want to do this, you got to go through this training. So everything was very physical. And mentally, I have always been, pretty tough. I know, a lot of people have these like sob stories where they came from nothing and they had to like, build everything up. I was fortunate because my dad had taught me the never quit mindset from early on. I mean, I'd go play lacrosse and, my dad would be like, look, this is your game. This is your ball. You need to win. Like there is no losing here. Be a team player, pass the ball. I mean, and he was just always on me. Like I'd go for a run and he'd be like, don't come back until you're tired. I mean, like he was just always, pushing me. And, I remember when I went to the Citadel, the first day we're sitting at the Holiday Inn and, we're eating breakfast, and I was just quiet because I was nervous. I was a little scared. I was just like, I didn't know what to expect. And I heard everybody gets their ass beat, get hazed. I mean, I'm 18 years old going into this military college, and we get to the parking lot to walk into first bat where I signed all my paperwork and got situated. And my dad, as I was coming around the car, grabbed my arm and pulled me aside and pulled me away from my mom. He's like, look, I don't give a shit how hard they yell at you. I don't give a shit how hard they push you. I don't even give a shit they put hands on you. You're not going to quit. You're not coming home. You're going to come in first, and you're always going to win. Same thing we've always talked about. You're just going to do it now and do it again. And I said, yes, sir. So, he's always ridden me pretty hard. So I've always had that mindset, from a very young age. It's just, carried over and transitioned, through all these different companies and I mean everything else that I've been through. So yeah, it's that transition was interesting, but again, just because I've always grown up with that very aggressive, tough mindset, I was able to, of course, make it through it. But like I said, just a little different instead of the physical push. This was more of a mental push. You know what I mean? I've never had to work for myself before, cut my own checks, build my own programs, get online, build businesses. But it was fun. And here we are. I've been working myself since 2016, and every year it's grown, and I'm just excited to be here and doing the damn thing.
So you're 9 years in right now, just about, right? Is that right?
Yep.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So I started Core about 15 years ago this October. And I just figured out over the last year, man, I tell everybody this. There's like these three phases of business that I've experienced. The first one, which was my favorite, and I think you might agree with, was like the oh shit phase. Like, how the fuck is this thing gonna work? And I have no other choice now because I can't fail.
That was my $800 first month.
Yeah, that's the phase, and that phase lasts for me for almost the first year, almost to the point to where we had to shut. We weren't going to make it, and then then my timing was just impeccable, and some things happened, and we just blew up. Went from like legitimately making nothing to like $20,000 a month. It was that, all the people that owned the HRT clinics in Florida 15 years ago also owned pain clinics, and the DA came in and wiped them all out, and I was the only one standing. Because I was doing things right even back then, and the other ones were, it was a sushi menu. You just check the box, we'll send you your shit, So I went and ended up, just crushing it from there. But it was timing, and it was doing the right thing and hitting home plate every day, just like you said. Then stage 2 is like, oh wow, I'm paying my bills and I can afford not to eat just ramen noodles anymore. Right. So you start to get that comfort zone. And once you have that personal financial comfort, right? For me, Ryan, then it was easier for me to really grow the business, because like I got over the ability to pay the business bills and my personal bills and not have to dig into savings, which I had very little of, right? And then once that happens, then you can really focus on your staff, right? Because I don't believe you can really build a good staff without a good financial platform, because I'm a big believer in overpaying staff so that they overwork, and I'm a big fan of, my MAs and, make nurse money, and my PAs, we pay real well, and my patient coordinators, they're amazing and they deserve every penny. And everyone deserves every penny. My staff's impeccable. And then, and those eyes really can't get opened until, you have the security. So that's kind of, stage 2 is like you're kind of cycling through staff a little bit to try to find the right place. And it's amazing. No matter what business I help with, mentor with, consult with, it's always the same process. And it's been an amazing ride for me. I mean, so you have 3 things going on. Give us an idea of those 3 things and how they all work together.
Do you want the 3 stages you just mentioned, or
no, the 3 types of businesses that you're running right now?
Oh, so okay, so I just got rid of a few. I actually had one business that was called Let Me Live My Life, which was LMLML, which is one of the tattoos that I have, just because I'm a very big proponent of doing what makes you happy, and live your own life, and not worry about what everybody else says. But the big focus that I'm on right now is like I was mentioning, I do online fitness and nutrition. Basically trying to transition right now, these past couple months, into the longevity and human performance field, as I'm a big believer in, coaching. When I first got into it, it was, calories in, calories out, cardio training. I mean, it was very simplistic. But as we evolve, and as, things have come to light with the way the world is right now, and obviously health is a very big thing. Longevity is a huge thing. And, pairing all that with nutrition, to me, working on just being an optimal human and human performance and high achievers is the move. So right now, my biggest, I guess I'd say, project is this rebrand. And I work with a lot of individuals, anywhere from those who have not been in the fitness before, that want to get into the health and fitness world, to, competitors that have already reached a certain level and they want to take it to the next. So that's my biggest project right now, is, again, just, the health, the fitness, the nutrition. I also do mentoring. So I have a few mentor students that I work on. I have 2 programs. One is for younger coaches that are trying to come up in the coaching industry, trying to get them set up properly so they don't have to go through the same mistakes that I made growing into the business. Because, just like you mentioned, when you first get into business, you run through a lot of issues, and especially when you're doing it for yourself, and trying to navigate those can be difficult. So I like to try to get younger coaches, help them navigate through those issues so they can kind of be on the fast track to kind of get where I am. The other mentorship program is what I call Rise and Optimize, which is kind of what you touched on before with my routines and my schedules and everything I do throughout the day. This program is basically helping others implement the same type of strategies to basically win and conquer the day, win and conquer their week, and win and conquer their life for the most part. So those are the biggest catalyst right now that I'm working on. I enjoy what I do thoroughly. I love working with highly motivated individuals. Some coaches like, oh, I'll work with anybody.
It's like it's like a unicorn these days.
It is. 10 years ago, finding people that were very driven and aggressive and, wanting to win was, a little easier. Nowadays, with social media and just all the other outlets that we have, laziness is probably the the most common thing that you can find. So to find highly driven, people that really want to become high achievers, it's not easy anymore, but those are the people that I like to work with. I'm very compassionate. I'm very easy to work with, but I also want you to win. You're not going to win by somebody holding your hand. So at the end of the day, I want people that are very aggressive. I want people that have a good drive, that want to win, that want to excel, that want to take themselves to the next level. And that want to live as long as possible. I'm huge into hormesis, ice therapy, heat therapy, fasting. There's a lot of things that I'd love to incorporate, not just with myself, but with, the clients that I work with. And, when you already have someone that has a really good mindset, it's easy to work with someone like that. I also work with a few people in the Rise and Optimize mentorship that don't have that drive. And that's probably the hardest, I think, thing to teach somebody is how to get aggressive and how to get a good mindset and how to be very driven. Again, I've been like that from an early age, basically from my father and my mother, the way that they brought me up. Even my mom's, father was a Marine. So I had a lot of Marines in the house. in the house. So, of course, you're not going to get away with shit when you're, living with a bunch of Marines. So, just that attitude's always been something that's been instilled in me. And I'd like to help put that and instill that into as many people as I can, because once you are able to master your nutrition, you're able to master your training, you're able to master your routines, your habits, your mindsets, you can become very optimal in a lot of spaces. I'm a huge believer that nutrition and fitness is the source. It'll change your entire life, especially if you work with it enough and get yourself in a really good spot. Just the confidence that comes from it, the boost you get from it, everything that fitness and nutrition teaches somebody when they're aggressive with it can filter over into so many other aspects of life. I have countless texts of people that, maybe were struggling at work or their personal life, and they get into programming and they start getting a grasp on their health, their fitness and nutrition. And then next thing you know, they're getting promoted at work, or their relationship's getting in a better place, or, they're getting more organized in their life, which is, coming to fruition and many other things that they're doing. So that's why I believe, in this space so much, because if you get fit, you get healthy, you get in a really good spot, you become optimal. It just doesn't benefit you in the fitness world. It benefits you in life in general with everything that you do, because you're learning to take the discipline and everything else that it instills in you to stay on the meals, to stay on plan, to stay on target, to stay consistent. You filter that over into work, relationships, your personal life. It just makes everything better. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that I see in a lot of my clients is that, like, oh my gosh, like, I'm in such a good spot, and this has got better, this has got better, that's got better, my relationship's got better. And I'm like, yeah, because like now you're becoming an optimal person. Like, a lot of things can happen when you do the right thing.
So, what's interesting as I get older, I'm 45. I turned 45 this month in May.
Oh, nice.
And
happy birthday.
Thank you. And what's become important to me at 45 is when I take my shirt off, I'm not embarrassed. Like, because I go to the beach here in Florida, and I go to the pool, and even though we're surrounded by beautiful people that are a lot more in shape than where I grew up in, just outside the city of Boston.
Hmm.
You know, I really feel, and this isn't being snobby. I really feel like somebody who doesn't have visceral fat and someone who has some muscle tone at 40 years old, they're just taken serious. Like because people are judgmental. We just talked about this in my past podcast, and you know, someone who carries themselves and cares about what they, you know, what their appearance is and how they interact in that first conversation. Like that's the type of stuff that's really become important to me because the last thing I want to do is like, you know, people talk about it quite a bit, like die with like that regret of being like, I could have been better. I could have stayed in shape longer. Listen,
Yep.
eventually we become brittle, right? I mean, I have a lot of patients that are 70 years old that would still probably beat my ass, in, in, including my father-in-law, which reminds me quite a bit about, you know, your childhood, you know, coming up, which I can tell you about, but and then also that when someone does get to know you, which I want to talk about, is that routine.
Mhm.
Like two things that I really focus on. And if you have a routine, you get to stay in shape and you get to look good, feel good, and I feel like when you're looking good and feeling good, you are a better service to others, right? Because
A
people.
100%.
So talk to me real quick about what your routine looks like when you're not training for something crazy. Like, so for
Okay.
the majority of the people out there, you know, there's thousands of patients at Core Medical Group. I like to make people understand that without routine, you're in some trouble. Now, it's important for me to shelf my routine when I take a vacation with my family. Are there still
Yes.
things in that routine that I'm doing? Yes, but you know, there's also unhealthy levels of routine, in my opinion, as well. And I believe
Hmm.
changing up that routine is important as well. But for you, give us some input of that patient out there that's at Core Medical Group that's having a hard time getting a routine. What do you do to stay on that routine? And how do you build that routine? And you know that might be a question that would also endure you know a check paid to you, but
Yeah.
but give us a few tricks of the trade.
So, honestly, the biggest, I guess, trick that I can give anybody out there that's having a hard time getting into a routine, it's because they're overwhelmed by everything that they're seeing. I mean, they're seeing people on Instagram, all these influencers out there. And you're going to get this from influencers, not from coaches, because obviously, influencers just want to influence you, where coaches are actually going to educate you. But I think people get overwhelmed and they try to do too much, and they think to have, a good routine, you got to have, the ice bath, you got to have the sauna, you got to have all these elaborate tricks and toys and all this other stuff to kind of get yourself in a good spot. And I think they try to do too much. So what I try to work on with, a lot of my clients and even my students in the Rise and Optimize mentorship is find three things that you need to be successful, and you just need to double down on the basics. So you have a lot of people that are like, all right, starting Monday I'm going to get up at 4 a.m, I'm going to do the ice bath, then I'm going to go for a run, then I'm going to hit the gym, and then I'm going to meal prep. And I'm like, bro, we're already way too aggressive here. Like
I
I
don't
am
even do
huge.
that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and that's what I get, because I explained to me, what would
It's
your morning
awesome.
routine look like? And they give me this like list of everything, and I'm like, what time do you normally get up? And they're like, well, I normally sleep till 9. So, but if I get up at 4, I'm like, all right, well, we're not going to cut your wake time by 5 hours tomorrow and be consistent with it. Like,
Yeah, do
that's not
people
going to work.
understand what
So,
that takes? That means you have to adapt getting in bed earlier, and
well,
that's
that's
not
the thing,
that's not
because
easy.
when you have a routine, like a lot of people think, oh, your routine starts in the morning. My routine starts the day before, because I'm getting myself set up for that next day. So I typically like, all right, so if you get up at 8, instead of looking at 4, let's start at like 6. You don't have to go out and buy this elaborate ice bath. You can do a cold shower. Like, there's a lot of things that you can do, you can implement. Because the biggest thing, also on top of finding these routines that work for you, is you can't have, let's say, lack of better terms, we'll talk about a morning routine. You can't have a morning routine that you can't implement while you're away. So, for instance, if you have this whole routine that you do with pour over coffee. I mean, I've seen the craziest stuff that people do for their morning routines. You're not going to travel to your hotel with all this stuff. And then if you don't, you're freaking out because you can't stick with your routine. You have to have routines and systems in place that you are able to do when you travel to the cabin, travel to the hotel, travel out of the country, things that you can still kind of do on the daily to keep yourself optimal. So for me, it's really finding out 3 basic things that you need to win and then doubling down on the basics. Once you double down on the basics, then you can start getting advanced. And I think, like I said, the biggest thing what I see is people trying to get too aggressive with their routines, because what you need to do is you have to have a routine that you can consistently show up to every day. If you have some crazy off the wall routine that you can't do every day, it's not worth it. I'm big on the morning routines. I think how you start your morning is how you complete your day. I think how you start your week, like a Monday, is how you complete your week. So I'm big on energy. So if you get up first thing in the morning, for me, getting in the ice bath just starts my entire day exactly the way I want it. So for me, that's like the biggest thing that I do first thing in the morning. Um, but I also have an ice bath. It's easy for me to get up and go downstairs and get into it. If I travel, I don't have it. I'll do a decent, cold shower. But realistically, kind of what I was saying before is, you don't always need straight A's. You just need perfect attendance. So you just need to show up every day. So if you find 3 things, like let's say getting up first thing in the morning at 6 o'clock is now going to be your
That shit happens all the time. I don't know.
happens all the time. Well,
I've seen
so
some
I
weird.
do.
I've seen some weird shit pop up there before.
I do too. Well, I do Loom for all my clients. So whenever I'm sending them, and I'm very animated, as you can see with my hand.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like, I'm
It's
giving all these like signs and stuff. I have like thumbs up, balloons, fireworks, all this stuff in the background. But going back to the routines is, let's say getting up early is the one thing you want to implement. So let's say we're going to get up at 6 o'clock. And then, the other thing you may want to implement is making sure you get your food in. Because that's another thing that a lot of people neglect is nutrition. But setting your nutrition as simple or as, silly as it sounds, optimizes your day, because let's say you have 4 meals and you're structuring those meals every 3 to 4 hours, you're now creating time blocks in your day. So now you're okay, between meal 1 and 2, what am I filling this time
oh,
block
that's
with?
awesome.
Meal 2 and 3, what am I filling this block with? So for me, it's work and it's activity. I like to try to stay moving. And then let's say the third thing for your routine may be you're going to hit a step goal of, let's say, 8,000 steps a day. And now you have to compartmentalize and break that up into sections throughout the day. So you find 3 things, like getting up at 6 a.m. every day, getting your food in, and getting your steps in are 3 simple things that you can do every day. You got to eat, you got to move, and you got to get up. Those are the 3 easiest things you have to do, right? So if you can create a routine out of those that you're able to implement every day, after a while, when you have these, actions that we'll call them at first, because they're not necessarily habits yet because you haven't really implemented them. You're taking these actions, and the more you do them over and over and over, they start to become habits. Well, now these habits will eventually transfer over into a routine because you're doing it so often. So I just tell people, look, find 3 things that work for you and double down on those and just stick to those 1 week, 2 weeks, get it into a routine. Once you're in a consistent flow, then at that point you can get more aggressive. But I think everybody just bites off too much off the rip that they can't really handle when it comes to building a routine. Because the 3 things that you need to be successful is you need good habits, you need good routines, and you need a good mindset. If you have those, everything will start to fall into place if you're aggressive enough to keep those in motion. The biggest thing that I can also add on to that is non-negotiables. If you're not working with non-negotiables or implementing non-negotiables throughout your day, throughout your week, you're doing it wrong. Because non-negotiables, is exactly what they are. They're non-negotiable. So when I sit down on, let's say, Sunday, and I'm like, all right, what are my 3 non-negotiables for the week? All right, my 3 non-negotiables, I'm going to make sure that I get my 9,000 steps in a day. I'm going to make sure that I meal prep, get all my meals in, and I'm going to, make sure that I'm going to bed every night at 9 o'clock. Let's just say those are my 3 non-negotiables. No matter what happens during the week, you got to show up for those. So every night, no matter how much work you have left, no matter what you're going to get in, what you need to get in, at 9 o'clock, that's a hard stop time. You're getting in bed. Your 9,000 steps, if you got 8,000, you got, It's time to wind down, get outside and get that last 1,000 in. Like no matter what, you have to show up and check those non-negotiables off the list. And if you can start implementing that throughout your week as well, you're going to turn these non-negotiables and habits into a routine. It's really just like I mentioned before, and I probably sound like a broken record, but it's because I believe in it so much. You just got to show up every day. The more you show up and hit your non-negotiables, the more you're going to put these into a routine. And once you find out a routine that works for you, and you get into, what I would call like your systematic flow, which is basically where you run on autopilot, that's when you're getting yourself into an optimal space.
That was just an awesome explanation, Ryan, because so, the meal prep doesn't have to be, 5 or 6 meals per day every 2 hours to start. It could be like, hey, I'm not eating breakfast. Now I'm going to eat 3 meals a day. I'm going to get my 8,000 steps in. And, I'm going to go to bed at 9 instead of at midnight and try to get up 2 hours earlier. Yep. So, and the way that you broke that down also between like what you're achieving between meals was just amazing too. I've never even thought about that. I'm a big fan of eating 4 or 5 times a day too. And scheduling my time between those meals. I guess I do it already just because I've been doing it for so long. But
you're in your flow.
I'm in the flow, and I get up out of bed. I train in the morning. I sauna. I cold plunge. I just got that the goat plunge from Phelps, the half jacuzzi, half cold plunge. It's pretty amazing, and my day has to start off like that. Sunday mornings I might slow it down a little bit. Enjoy the family a little bit slower in the morning because it's really my only day. But other than that, man, it's like, all right, my training partner shows up at my house every day, same time, without even having to contact him. It's just that flow. I will tell you, I was in Canada for about a week ago, and we stayed in the shed 6 hours north of Saskatoon, and there was this lake the first day we got to that had ice on it, and the second day the ice was gone. And, I decided to try my luck in that lake as a cold plunge. And
nice.
Even with the water being circulated in the Phelps cold plunge, being in a lake with that circulation at 38 degrees was just devastating, right? I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but dude, it was rough, man. But
what was it? What was it running? Was it flowing?
Oh yeah, it was like there's like 5 lakes. They're all attached through like these canals. Nice. It was just like brutal. Okay. And what people don't understand is if you get in a cold plunge, that's not circulated, and then you get in like a plungy
that
or
thermal layer.
That is just it takes 40 down to 35, 100%.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because when you're in that cold plunge, like you have that when it's stagnant, your body builds up that thermal layer to help protect you and keep you warm. So I think what you're talking about with the Phelps cold plunge, if it circulates and it sends that water out, it breaks up that thermal layer. So it literally stays incredibly cold. That's why I asked if the lake was, water.
It was running, bro. It was bad.
It'll keep you really, really cold. Like your body doesn't have a chance to really build up that thermal layer.
Yeah.
So cold is actually really cold.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean that type of stuff too. So before we got about 10 minutes left or so, but before we wrap up, guys like you, I see how fit you are, which is like, it's like ridiculous how in shape you stay.
I appreciate it.
And my hat's off to you. I don't know. How old are you?
I'm 43.
You're 43. That makes me feel even worse. All right. So talk to me not just about your gym workouts, your mental workouts, but also talk to me a little bit about why you feel like, because I can tell also you have that protector mentality as well, obviously. Sure. Why do you feel like that mentality for a man is just so important, and especially why is it so important now? Because there's a lot of people that give me a lot of nasty notes here on this podcast because I CQB train once or twice, 2 to 3 times per month. I shoot twice a week. My daughter shoots once a week. I'm a huge bow hunter. I love the woods. I feel like America's losing sight of men being, whether they're a civilian or a police officer or a SF operator, whatever it might be, the importance of situational awareness and being a protector, we can kind of close out with
Okay.
how you deliver that message to others and why you find it so important for you.
So, again, that's actually a really, really good question. This is an awesome topic. This goes back to, being in law enforcement. I mean, that was my profession for, close to a decade. I was a protector, and I was a protector of, people I didn't even know or had didn't know from Adam, right? But I loved what I did, and all of my professions, even with the nutrition side. I mean, it's helping others. It's I'm basically a servant, right? One pay to another. And for me, the protector mentality is very, very important. And I think more so now than ever, like you mentioned, because when you go out and you look around, there are not a lot of people that I feel like are there to help you or there to save you. I am the type of person where, every place I go, I'm like, okay, cool. Here's the entrance. There's the exit. All right, this dude's not paying attention. This dude's on his phone. This girl, like I watch and I just very observant of my, surroundings, very situationally aware. Um, when I go into a room and I look and I'm like, all right, who looks like they're carrying, who's not? I carry concealed everywhere I go, and I'm carrying right now. I always am, because, like you said, I mean, nowadays it's even more important to have that protector mentality because there's not a lot of guys that are out there that do. I see that in conversations that I have with people. There's not a mindset out there now where a lot of individuals are basically like the send me. Um, there's not. So for me, it's important because I look at it as like, okay, like if I'm not carrying concealed, who is? If I go to this restaurant and I'm on a date or I'm with my family or I'm with my friends and a gunman comes in, who's gonna help? Like who's gonna be the one that's gonna take
Exactly.
this
There's
guy
not a
down?
detailed police officer in front of every place you
There's
go.
not because and not only that, but I mean, I'll be the first one to admit I still have friends that are on the force. Like police officers are scared to do the job now. I mean, look at everything that's going on
and
around
I
the
and
world.
I
Like it,
and
it
I train with quite a few police officers, and it's sometimes
yeah.
too. It's even
Well,
scary. It's like, dude, man, you really need to get behind this weapon, bro. You're
it really is. But I even see it, with officers on the road. Like I see, it's insane. Like when you are, out and about, and you see some of these police officers. It's just like they're not situationally aware. Their uniforms disheveled. They're just it bothers me.
Cody
So
Alfred stood up in front of about 2,000 police officers in Spokane, all detectives, and they were 80% of them were out of shape,
yeah, 100%.
heavily. And you know what he says to win the audience over?
What's that?
Where I come from, people that are fat and shoot their gun once a year die first. And I was like, oh, this is going to
Yeah.
be sick.
I mean, he's 100% true. I actually I love following him on social
He's a
media.
stud, dude. He's
He
awesome.
he's amazing. I love just listening to him talk. His mindset's amazing. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, and we talked about being in shape, and I mean, honestly, for me at 43, that's my biggest flex. It's not the money. It's not anything else. It's fitness because again, I find myself being an asset when I walk into a room, when I walk into a building. Like, I'm the guy that you want on your kickball team. Like, that's why I train the way that I train because I want to be that guy that is going to be there when things go south because there's not a lot of people out there anymore that are willing to do that. So I still hold that mentality from being a police officer, from being a contractor, from being in the line of work that I've been in. And like you mentioned before, I still train very, very heavily. I shoot twice a month. I have a group of close to a dozen police officers that I train with, and we train. We don't just go to the range and throw some lead down. We actually train. And it's very important for me to stay connected in that community. I'm the only civilian out there that trains with these guys, but it's nice to be around that type of individual, that type of mentality. Because I know that the guys that I shoot with are the type of guys like me that will be there if something happens. And I think for me, looking around, it's sad to see how far away we've gotten from this mentality, especially
Oh,
in the
totally agree.
with the males. I mean, I remember when I was growing up, the reason I am the way that I am is because everywhere I turned, I mean, there was just alpha males everywhere, and everybody was aggressive. I mean, I grew up watching like Rambo and Rocky
Yeah,
and
fuck yeah.
Commando and like all this stuff, and I'm like, this is what a man's supposed to be like.
100%,
And then
dude.
now I'm like, man, this is where we are right now. Like,
Yeah,
I'm like an anomaly. Like, this is not the way it's supposed to
I
be.
mean, there's like
And
transvestites on my daughter's cartoons and shit that it's like fucking
well,
crazy, dude. I'm like,
well,
shut
and
that off right now. Like, that's not cool.
well, and that's the
Sorry,
thing is,
I'm gonna lose some viewers over that one, but I don't really care.
yeah, well, I mean, but I mean, and you're right because the way that everything is, the society has shifted us away from that mindset so aggressively, and you have so many sheep out here that just follow what they say. There's not, a lot of, sheepdogs and lions out there
Yeah,
that are willing to help wrangle the herd. But when I took those vows as a police officer, when I was, in law enforcement for as long as I was, like I still uphold those. I still bleed blue. I mean, shit, I'll see a police officer pulled over on the side of the road and try to stop him. I'm like slowing down, like, this gonna need help. Like, what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
not that I can really do much, but like, I'm so into just the protector realm. I love when I'm with a group of my friends and they're like, hey man, like, I'm glad you're here. Like, I love being around you. Like, I feel good around, like, that makes me
yeah.
feel good.
Fuck
Like,
yeah.
I like being that type of person. Like when I walk into the room, I just like to have that certain presence. I look for the type of presence that I bring in others. And I'm like, all right, this guy looks like someone that I could get along with. All
Yeah.
right, if something happens, this guy looks like a good dude. Like he's definitely caring. Because, even like you mentioned before, presence. I remember even when I was a police officer, there'd be numerous calls where fat and out of shape, cops that I would work with were just getting run over. People weren't listening for anything. Well, then you walk in and you're muscular. You got, your gig lines. Your shoes are good. Your pants are ironed. Like your uniform's tight. Like, everything looks good. You have a good officer presence to you, and you walk in, and they're like, "Oh,
Fuck.
man, this guy actually means business."
Yeah.
And that's another reason why, I mentioned before that, the nutrition world and fitness, is the source. Because once you get yourself in the optimal place, you walk different, you talk different, you're more confident. Like when you walk into a room, you can demand presence without even demanding it. And I think that's very important these days because there is not a lot of testosterone out there. It's
Well,
very
I'm doing a
beta
really good
in a lot
job.
of ways.
I'm doing a really
Well,
good job giving it to people that need it.
well, good. We
We're not a
need
free
this.
for all, but
We need
anybody
it.
under 450, we definitely analyze, age versus, their goals, where there's free and total sits. And, we've done a very, very good job changing lives. And I'll tell you right now, Ryan, I'm sure you'll agree with this. If your testosterone's at 250 and you're trying to build a routine and become a protector, it ain't happening, dude. Like, it's just
Nope,
not.
you don't have the motivation to do it. Like, I mean, I'm a huge believer in your testosterone being optimal. I won't even work with anyone that doesn't do lab work. So every client that's on my roster, they do labs with me. At least twice a year. If we need to do it more, we do. But I'm big on hormones. I look at all the levels. I see a lot of guys that I get that are 253, 350. And they're like, I don't know why I'm not progressing. I'm doing all the right things. And I'm like, bro, you could be doing all the right things, but your testosterone is tanked. Like, I'd like to see you at least 700 or above.
Yep,
I mean, I think that's a
100%.
pretty optimal. And I have one gentleman right now. Matter of fact, he's a Marine. And he's still active duty, and got actually him on the TRT, and he got his testosterone up, and night and day, not
Day.
just in his look and his physique, because he's actually gained a shit ton of tissue, and he looks like he should look now, and
Uh-huh.
he's training the way that he should train. But even he mentioned, he's like, dude, work has gotten so much better. Like, I'm just more excited. I'm able to get up early at this point. I have more energy, and I'm like, yeah, dude, that's called being optimal. Like when you're
Exactly.
optimal, good things happen. That's why when people complain and they're just kind of, down and out and they're just, negative Nancy's, I'm like, you got to get fit.
Yeah,
Like,
dude.
I'm not
Exactly.
saying that like that's the only answer because that's what I do.
Yeah, yeah,
But
for
I mean,
sure.
the common denominator with, everybody that I see that's happy is fit.
It-
So, if you get yourself in a good place with your nutrition, which I love training. I train hard. I want all my people to train hard. But if you're not tracking your nutrition, I don't give a shit how hard you train. You're not going to change. Um, so when you get your nutrition in check, you get your training in check, you get your routines in check, you're getting your stress in check because that's a big thing right now too.
Big, huge.
And you're getting all these variables together. You're getting enough sleep, you're getting enough recovery. That's when you really start to see your entire life change. When you get your health and fitness under control, everything else follows suit. And I know there's probably some people that already listen to this podcast and go, this dude doesn't even know what he's talking about. Like, how does that translate? That's because you're out of shape. Get yourself in
Yeah,
shape.
exactly. I was just going to say, let me guess, that person's out of shape.
Get yourself in a good, optimal place with your training, your nutrition, your routine. Your entire life will change. Like I said earlier, fitness is a source. I swear by it. People that don't believe me just need to try it. Give yourself 30 days of just eating the right foods, getting the right amount of movement, getting the right amount of water, and the right amount of sleep, and you will see night and day differences in how you operate your life. 100%.
So there's one thing before we close out here, and I want to just applaud you because you said something that, like, I talk about with Big Mel Chansey all the time, and I talk about it with Cody. Guys, there's influencers out there, right? And there's online coaches out there, and there's two very, very, very big different things.
Yeah.
And DM Ryan if you're having a hard time figuring out what the difference is. And also, guys, take your time shopping for that coach. Cody and Jason and Nick K. Sometimes they have someone that's not right for them, and they'll pass them off to one of the other dudes on Core's team, and that's an okay thing.
That's a great thing.
It's a great thing. And Ryan is a great source. I mean, you can just tell that no nonsense, driven. He's not trying to be, the guy online that's charging $20,000 for 30 days of interaction to be able to get in a picture on social media with someone that has 10 million followers. He's talking about real life fucking changes here. And that's why he's on this podcast right now. And Ryan, I want to thank you so much, dude, for taking the time. I hope we can chat and maybe do some things in the future together.
Yes.
Once again, man, thank you so much for coming on, dude.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat. Obviously Jonathan that's connected us. Said nothing but great things about you. So
I appreciate
shout out
that.
to Jonathan. I appreciate him connecting us. And this has been awesome. I really appreciate, you thinking about me and bringing me on, and I've enjoyed our chat, and we will definitely be connected in the future, for sure.
Thanks, brother. Be well.